Hello, William.
Good morning. I guess we should get this show started here. Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for joining RMHAM University this morning. And thank you again for Mike for putting on another one of these DMR sessions. We really appreciate it. Hope you all are enjoying the isolation and all of that kind of good stuff. As ham radio operators, many of us has been practicing this for many, many years. And also today is World Amateur Radio Day. So I think that entitles you to some special treatment, although I'm not exactly sure what that entails. So with that, Mike, please take it away. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Willem. Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody is well. I hope the current situation, the pandemic, hasn't had too much of an impact on your families. My hearts go out to those folks that have been impacted, and lots of folks to this. It's been very terrible. We're going to have try to have some fun here this morning with this. This is going to be a very informal kind of conversation, talking about the RMHAM DMR network. There's been some changes to the network, and even us that do the code plug maintenance kind of get behind on this and get surprised by some of these things. So I will be the first to admit that not all the changes have made it into my code plugs yet. I have some time set aside this weekend to get those done. And part of that is because I didn't realize just how extensive this was until this week. So having this is really this session today is really going to be a fun time going over the changes, so everybody's on the same page about what the changes have been. And once the code plugs come out, if you're waiting for those to get this done, then you'll know what to expect. By all means, we do highly encourage folks to know how to program your own radios. There are videos up both from a session of this and from my own videos on how to program a DMR radio for amateur radio. But sometimes that's not possible, but we do again encourage folks to learn how to do that so that they can get the changes into their code plugs as quickly as possible themselves. A couple of housekeeping items for this morning. Again, please keep yourselves muted until we get to the Q&A session. If you're more comfortable typing a question in chat, by all means do so. You are also by no means required to show your video. You'll notice that I am not, and that is because I am one of those folks that was already needing a haircut before all the barbershops shut down, and I am beyond looking scraggy this morning, so I'm not going to be showing my mug in my video this morning. Please forgive me for that. So without further ado, let's get into this. This is going to be, depending on how long the Q&A is going to be, this is going to be relatively short, but we wanted to get together, have some fun, chat with folks, and definitely go over some changes, especially down in New Mexico way. There's been some fun stuff going on down there. So the first thing I always like to do is come up with just a real quick things like what is exactly a network and what is this thing all about. I am glad we have Willem and John on to back me up on some of the more technical stuff in the back end, because even though for usability, it's not, some of this stuff is not really, relevant for that. It still helps to understand, how we've extended the network and that kind of a thing. So that'll be fun. Okay, so we're going to start talking about what is a network. We're going to go over the repeater locations and talk group mappings. And a lot of that we're going to do just by going to a map that I created, which is going to be, be the quickest way to do this. And then we're going to talk about the New Mexico talk group specifically. And then we'll go into general Q&A. So what is a repeater network? A repeater network is comprised of two or more repeaters connected together in such a way that when one repeater receives a transmission, it is broadcast by the other connected repeaters. That is the clearest definition of a repeater network that I've been able to come up with. So what it essentially does is allows us to extend broadcast area of our repeaters to other geographic areas. And in this case, when we get the map up, you'll see that it has gone out much further than I ever imagined it being. But we've got a good portion of Colorado covered, and we're starting to getting into northern New Mexico, which is kind of crazy. Now, the RMHAM repeater network started out as 5 talk groups: Rocky Mountain, North, South, Denver, which is now called Central, and Lookout Local. The newer talk groups that we have now, we have a local for Devil's Head. We have an Eastern talk group, which today is VHF. We also have a new New Mexico talk group, and we have a brand new Four Corners talk group, which is very, very interesting. And we're going to get to that when we get into the New Mexico section. Generally speaking, what you want to do is use the smallest coverage talk group possible when contacting another ham, unless you don't know where that other ham is, in which case you can use Rocky Mountain, what we call Rocky Mountain wide, to contact the other person. And if you guys are both within a range of a repeater that has a smaller coverage, you can then move over to that other talk group and continue on with the conversation. That's perfectly fine. Now, the map. So I spent most of yesterday updating this thing because I had left a few off. And as you can see, the coverage has grown a lot. So we're still going from Cheyenne down to Albuquerque, but we've got most, eastern New Mexico, eastern Colorado and western Colorado, both kind of in the north and definitely in the southeast, covered. About the only thing we don't have really any coverage in right now is southeast Colorado. We have southwest coverage. It's pretty cool. I was surprised by this when I got back up. Even me, who it maintains the talk groups, really surprised at how fast we've grown. It's pretty crazy. Now you can see the colors here, and I'm going to switch over to the live map here in just a minute. But the colors denote a geographic dispersion, and roughly translates into the talk group coverage. New Mexico has kind of made that a little weird now. We'll get to that in a second. But generally speaking, the yellow repeaters are the North talk group. The red ones are the South talk group, with the exception of a few repeaters down in New Mexico. And the blue ones are the Central talk group. Okay. The orange ones are the Eastern VHF network. There's also some Denver repeaters there. The purple ones are odd ducks, and those are ones that have, for example, local only. They have a local and a regional, and don't actually carry Rocky Mountain. But that's okay because there's other repeaters in that area that do. So we still have full Rocky Mountain talk group coverage, even though those particular repeaters don't carry it. All right, let me go ahead and pop up the wide coverage map here. See if I can get that on our screen. Let's see, where's the chat? Okay. A few questions in the chat. How to obtain code plugs? If you go to our website, rmham.org, and go to the DMR section, you'll see a menu selection for the code plugs. It's a whole page for the code plugs. So that is where that is. It's on our website. All right, you should now be seeing the live map. This is a map that I created in Google Maps. As you can see, you can zoom in and zoom out and do all sorts of fun things. I will put the link to that in the chat when we're done here. Over here on the left, I have different layers for the different repeater groups, so I can actually uncheck some of these and just focus on one particular area, the way I've designed it here. So for example, this is the North talk group. If the repeaters are in this group on the live map, that means they cover both, they carry both Rocky Mountain talk group and the North talk group. Okay. Generally speaking, the North talk group will be on time slot 1. And then the regional talk group, in this case, which would be North, will be on time slot 2. We made that a standard a long time ago. It's part of our keep it simple philosophy for DMR. It isn't until recently where we've really experimented with doing more than one talk group on a time slot. You'll see a lot of that when we get down into Mexico. That'll be a lot of fun. But generally speaking, that has kind of been our philosophy. So that's north. Central goes, I think, the furthest east and west of any of the talk groups. Okay. So out over here, we have Rangeley, which is in Cathedral Bluffs. And out here, we have Genoa. So it goes all the way from Rangeley to Genoa as far as our coverage is concerned. And then our most northern one is Jordan Mountain. And then southern one down here, down at Fairplay, Badger Mountain. So these will have Rocky Mountain again on time slot 1, and then they have the Central Talk Group on time slot 2. All right. We have our new VHF East, which we have VHF repeaters in these particular locations. The Eastern Talk Group right now, this is kind of an experiment about in having a talk group specifically for VHF and whatnot. It may or may not stay VHF only in the future. We will see. Those decisions I don't think have been made as of yet. We have a South Talk Group. Now you'll notice the New Mexico repeaters aren't on this. I'll get to that in a minute. But in Colorado, the South Talk Group repeaters go all the way from Colorado Springs and Pueblo all the way over to our 2 Durango repeaters on Missionary Ridge and Camp Traverse Mountain. These again, Rocky Mountain on time slot 1, South on time slot 2. And we have a few odd ducks in the configurations. We have a repeater in Fort Collins now, but that repeater in Fort Collins has a North Talk Group and a local talk group. Devil's Head down here has a South Talk Group and a local talk group. And then Lookout Mountain has Central Talk Group and a local talk group. So these are the repeaters that we have that have a somewhat regional, local only talk group. What that means is that when you transmit on that talk group, it only gets repeated by that repeater and is not repeated by other repeaters in the network. So these are our primary rag chew type repeaters. Whereas if you have users that can both get to the same repeater, you're not going to be tying up any of the rest of the network. So these are really, really cool. So if you're talking to people in Denver a lot and just talking to people in Denver and everybody that you talk to in Denver can get to the Lookout Mountain repeater, you stay on local, you're not going to be tying up the rest of the repeater with a chatter, which is very cool. Those are our local odd duck configurations. All right. So that is the network. Those are the regions. So now we're gonna before we go into New Mexico real quick, I want to talk about the Brandmeister repeaters and why isn't the I don't know why that's way out there. I'll fix that later, but that should be over here in Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado Springs. So we have 2 Brandmeister repeaters. One is on Lee Hill and Boulder. One is in Colorado Springs on Cheyenne Mountain. These repeaters are not connected to the rest of the RMHAM network. These repeaters are exclusive to Brandmeister, right? So we have a lot of chat of people about how can we get onto the Brandmeister network on the RMHAM network, and the answer is no. But we do have 2 repeaters specifically for Brandmeister, right? We do not have a Brandmeister repeater anywhere near New Mexico, unfortunately, but we do have 2 in the Denver, Colorado Springs area that you can use to get on Brandmeister. There's been a lot of chat about the DMR-based APRS. And the only network that I know of that supports that today is Brandmeister. And yes, you can use our Brandmeister repeaters for that. Of course, but we say you can't use it on our network just because it doesn't work. But we do not forward APRS traffic on the RMHAM DMR network. And so it doesn't work, and it just ties up the network needlessly. So if you want to use APRS, the DMR APS with like the Anytone radios, use it on a Brandmeister repeater or a Brandmeister hotspot. But that's a different topic. All right, I'm going to stop there and check the chat. How do the chat window for me doesn't come up when I share my screen? It's very annoying. There it is. Okay. If there are only 2 Brandmeister repeaters, are they all the others DMR marked? No, all the others are the RMHAM network. we have our own network of repeaters, right? There are no repeaters here that we've talked about today that are on DMR mark. They're our own isolated club repeater network. Okay, I hope that that's very, very clear. There are no DMR mark repeaters that we are doing here today. Any other questions for the chat? Are there any plans to further coverage on I-70 West? I believe that is either a Willem or a Doug question. I think that's a Doug question. Doug, do you care to chime in there? I mean, not Doug, excuse me, John. Jesus, sorry, it's morning. I need more caffeine. John?
So the answer to that question is yes, there is plans to do that. This summer, I think we're looking at getting into Glenwood Springs and getting into Grand Junction, if all goes well. We'll probably look at some other fill-in repeaters in the meantime, but right now, those are the two that we're looking at for this summer. I know that we're looking at going from Grand Junction south towards Durango, but that's probably more like a 5-year deal. That's not something we're going to be able to do this summer. Hopefully that helps.
Cool, thanks. Are there any plans for a Denver area Brandmeister repeater? The answer to that, I would say, is you can reach the Boulder repeater from Denver.
It's perfectly acceptable to use that.
Yeah, yeah. So it's as long as you can hit it, use it. So, so the answer to that question is no, but you can hit the Boulder Brandmeister repeater from Denver. I will also say, at risk of being somewhat of a trader here, there are many Brandmeister repeaters in Denver. Many Brandmeister. If you go to brandmeister.network and bring up the map, there are we are spoiled for Brandmeister repeaters in the Denver area. So yeah, we don't have one, but you can hit the Boulder one, and there are a bunch here. So no worries there. All right, any other questions before we hit and go into New Mexico in a virtual sense? Yeah, I know, and we're getting there. I saw the question. Robin sent me a question privately. So yeah, we're about to tackle New Mexico as one big thing. So let's go ahead and do that. Now I'm going to add in the South repeaters here for when we talk about New Mexico as well, because it was very hard to do the layers here because it's a bit of a mismatch because of the way that the talk groups are set up down in New Mexico, right? So we have 3 repeaters in New Mexico today. We have our first one, which is Albuquerque, which was on Sandia Mountain. We have one in Los Alamos, and we have a new one in Farmington. Okay. Now, John, is it correct to say that our microwave network from Colorado down into Mexico routes around the Farmington area? Is that an accurate statement?
That is incorrect. Farmington is currently running on the internet.
Okay. Cool. Now, the way this is set up is that of these repeaters that are on here, the only repeater here that's not on the South talk group is Farmington. Okay. So Farmington carries Rocky Mountain.
It's also on South. It has South also.
Oh, it wasn't on the list. It wasn't on the South list when I checked yesterday.
In about 10 seconds if it's not.
Good. Okay, good. That makes this easier. Excellent. So they're all on the South talk group. So all of these repeaters, thankfully, again, we have Rocky Mountain on time slot 1, South on time slot 2. Now, in addition to that, Farmington, Los Alamos, and Albuquerque have a talk group that they're on called New Mexico, which is oddly enough talk group 505, which I love that. I love that to death. So if you key up on 505, you will be keying up on these 3 repeaters. So New Mexico has their own state talk group on these 3 repeaters, which is very cool. Now, in addition to that, and this is where it gets kind of weird, there is also a 4 Corners talk group. Okay. Now the Four Corners talk group is just these 3 repeaters here. Okay? So if you key up on Four Corners, you're going to get Farmington and the 2 Durango talk groups. All right? Now, in addition to that, Los Alamos and Albuquerque both have a local talk group. So there's a local talk group for Albuquerque, with again will just be the Sandia repeater, the Sandia Crest repeater. And then Los Alamos also has its own local talk group, which will only be the Los Alamos repeater. Okay. So if you use one of those 2 talk groups, you're only going to be broadcasting out that repeater. Okay. So that is the situation down in New Mexico. And as far as I know, these 5 repeaters, New Mexico plus the 2 Durango repeaters, are the only repeaters in the RMHAM network that break our 1 talk group per time slot rule. And I know that the guys down in New Mexico have been wanting their own local talk groups for a long time now, and now that has happened, and I'm very, very happy for that. It's gonna be a lot of fun for these guys down there who've been clamoring for a DMR repeater of their own and having their own talk groups and that kind of thing. So that is the situation down in New Mexico. Questions? Are there any plans to put one on Raton Pass or in the Trinidad Raton area?
The answer to that is N5UBJ, Bill Van Huss, and RMHAM have been discussing this, and it's very likely going to happen in the fairly near future.
Sweet. Very good. What are the talk group numbers for New Mexico? And the answer to that is, if you go to the RMHAM website, and in fact, I'm gonna go ahead and share this out so you guys can see me do this. Share screen. There we go. We changed the background picture on the banner. Cool. So if you go here to the DMR network and go to DMR site information, also here's the code plugs, sample code plugs under here as well. There's the sample code plugs. We're going to go to the site information. Here's all the repeaters, and right under the table that has all the repeaters, there's a table that has all the talk groups. So you can see New Mexico is talk group 505. Los Alamos local is 714. And then the Four Corners local is 745.
Sandia local is 713.
Oh, sorry. Yes, thank you. Here we go. Beep, 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 beep. Sandia local is 713. Los Alamos local is 714. And it's 745 for Four Corners, the Four Corners repeaters. Now, my only thing, John, here is this Four Corners local. Local to me means not routed, and since this is routed to the 3, I don't think it should be called local. That's just my opinion. So here's all the talk groups and their numbers right here for you in a nice table there. And then when you scroll down, you get each talk group individually. Central, Northern, here's the New Mexico talk group, right? And it'll show you which repeaters carry that talk group and which time slot they're on as well. And there's the Southern, here's the Four Corners, and here's our 5 locals. All that information is here at your fingertips. All right.
One note that anytime anything changes on the network, this information gets updated before anything. So literally the day I get home from working on the network, we update this page.
So the question came in, did you say Farmington was also part of the talk group 719, which is south? Yes, it is now up there. John just updated it. Yes, it's right there on the screen. Please talk about the color code. Okay, so now we're going to go into the general Q&A. So this is a time when you can ask about anything about about DMR and amateur radio. Our first question is Please talk about the color code. What is it and how it's used? A color code goes back to something that, usually when I give my general talks, I talk about, and that is the DMR radio is an international commercial radio standard. Okay, it was never designed or intended to be used for amateur radio use. Okay, so if you were in regular radio, if you were in commercial radio specs and whatnot, this would make more sense. But this is a digital radio standard, and so things do the same thing to do in amateur radio stuff, but they call it a different thing, and it functions a little differently. So in DMR, the color code is what we would call kind of like a CTCS tone almost, right? So it is the first gatekeeper into a repeater, and you have to have the repeater will have a color code. And you have to set your color code on your channel, and if you get that wrong, the repeater will not accept your transmission, right? This allows you to have multiple repeaters on the same repeater frequencies in the same area and allow them to interoperate without interfering with each other, okay? Now, the color code is actually a number. It's not a color, which is the first weirdness. But as with most things in DMR, when you're first learning as an amateur, you just have to accept it and move on. So the color code is just an access number for the repeater that you have to set on your channel to make sure that it'll talk correctly. So most of our repeaters are either color codes. Most of them are 7, some of them are 6, some of them are 8, but you have to have that programmed correctly on the channel for you to be able to talk to the repeater. Okay. Questions coming in fast and furious here. On Brandmeister repeaters, is there only certain talk groups able to be accessed or any talk group? I don't think we limit our talk groups on our Brandmeister repeater. Most Brandmeister repeaters owners don't, because
only the Colorado Springs repeater is limited.
Okay, good. So the Boulder one isn't limited. So you can talk to any talk group on Brandmeister on the Boulder repeater, but the Colorado Springs one, if we go back up here to our menu, there's a Brandmeister listing here. If you go to Brandmeister repeaters, here's our 2 repeaters. And then down here, it'll tell you what's statically linked on this is on the Colorado Springs repeater. It's our test bed. So that's why it's limited.
If you're in Colorado Springs and you want something different, contact Jay, N0PKT, and he can route it for you.
Cool. You might want to put that up on the page. Is that up on the page? Yeah, right here. Jay, N0PKT. The impact of multiple talk groups in a single time slot. So the way that DMR works is that you can have one conversation on a time slot at a time, okay? So if you have 2 talk groups on a time slot, if the first talk group is chatting and someone tries to chat on the second talk group, they're gonna get a busy tone. And then if they try to bump into each other, it's gonna cause a little bit of interference. So you have to be very careful when you have a time slot that has multiple talk groups, so that you don't unnecessarily interfere with somebody else's conversation. So that's why early on we went with a 1 talk group or time slot kind of philosophy to keep that from happening.
And one other note, you probably ought to put in your received group list all of the other talks or the other talk groups, so that you can hear them if somebody's up and talking on it.
Yeah, and we do that by default in our sample code plugs to make that viable. What kind of data could be passed on Eastern other than text? Has anyone tried WinLink? I don't think WinLink is compatible with DMR.
It's IP data. If you can send it over IP, it can do it.
Okay, very good. Is it single digit only? And I'm assuming that's talking about the color code. I think initially it was. That may be expanding, but again, that's a DMR protocol thing. And in that case, really, you just need to be able to look at the repeater that you want to program to see what the color code is. So it has to match. So using a color code other than what's on the repeater is not going to do you any good. So double digits, really, in that case, doesn't really matter. I know that there are a couple of us, I think, in Colorado Springs that have been testing text on East, by the way, and it's been having some success. Good. Very, very good. Why are the contacts in the RMHAM plugs marked worldwide? Okay, so there are some artifacts in the sample code plugs. So you'll see in the talk group list in the sample code plugs that there were some DMR mark talk groups in there. Those have just been left in there because I was too lazy to delete them. And it's easier for some folks that if they do have a DMR mark repeater in their area, that they want to put in. The talk groups are already there for the major talk groups, but it's just they're old artifacts. You can ignore them. Where do you find color codes? The color codes will be on the repeater listing. So if you look here, here's our repeater setup for our Brandmeister repeater. So it tells you the transmit and receive frequency and then the color code. So any repeater that has this information listed will list not only its frequencies, but it'll list its color code. And then you can program that color code as part of the channel specs when you're programming the channel in your radio. We try really hard not to recommend radios because we don't want to get into radio religion. There were a few radios that were on the market that we absolutely said do not buy because they weren't operating correctly and were interfering. But we try really hard not to recommend a radio. Now, that being said, I will say that if we have a code plug for a radio, that radio has been somewhat widely adopted and known to be good use. But we don't want to get into this whole thing about recommending radios and pissing people off because people are buying radios and not other radios because of a recommendation. Now, that said, if you have the money and you can afford to pick up a Motorola radio, you can never go wrong with a Motorola radio. They tend to be the most robust, especially if you're working towers or working in environments where you have a tendency to drop your radio a lot. The Motorola radios obviously work very, very, very well and are very robust and sturdy radios. You can never go wrong with that. They tend to be a little expensive. You do have to get licensing for the software, but you can't go wrong with those. I tend to go back and forth between Connect Systems and Anytone. That's just me. Is there a message group that newbies can ask dumb questions after this meeting? Just email me directly. My email is on the color code page. It's k0nga@arl.net. Feel free to contact me. I tend to be the primary contact person for answering questions outside the club for DMR. And then if I don't know the answer, I can get it off to somebody who does. I tried to open sample code plugs, but I'm unable to open RTT files, and I know I had the same problem trying on PC and Mac. The RTT files can only be opened by the software for which they were intended. And as far as I know, there are no code plugs programming softwares that run on Mac. So if you're opening a Motorola code plug, you have to open it with a Motorola software. If you're opening a Connect Systems code plug, you have to open it with a Connect Systems software. If you're opening an Anytone code plug, you have to open it with the Anytone software. So you can't just open it with anything. You have to open it with the required software for which it was written. What transmission permissions do you recommend? For DMR, you want color code free. For analog on DMR radios, don't set anything because the tail makes DMR radios do stupid things. So leave it open for analog. For digital, use color code free. Can you tell us how the RM721 bridges to or with BM30813? This is on the experimental repeater in Colorado Springs, I presume, and generally it's Voodoo. Actually, there's a piece of hardware that we have. I think it runs on a Raspberry Pi that just translates between the two. It takes the receiving on one and then transmits it on the other. So it's a piece of software running on a Raspberry Pi that does that. And I don't know the details. You can contact back to the Brandmeister. Contact J N0PKT. We'll have to look up his email and say, hey, how are you doing that? And I'm sure he'll be more than happy to give you excruciating levels of detail on how that's done.
It's called DMR Link, and it does run on a Raspberry Pi. And we allow inbound connectivity to the North, Central, and South network, which is listed somewhere on the website. I don't remember exactly where it is. That gives you connectivity from Brandmeister back to RMHAM. We don't allow outbound, but we allow inbound.
Yep. Cool. On the sample code plug channel list, are there only UHF frequencies? What about on the channel list? Code plug channel. Yes. So this is another artifact of the times because up until really very recently, there were no dual channel, not dual channel. What am I talking about? What am I thinking of, John? You can do VHF and UHF. What is that called?
Dual band.
Thank you. Dual band DMR radios up until very, very recently. And until the Anytones came out, there weren't any really viable dual band DMR radios. Now we have the Anytone radios. We have the Texas CSX 800D. So now that they're there, that's possible. But for the longest time, it was either UHF or VHF. So since the RMHAM network was and still is primarily UHF, our sample co-plugs were UHF only. Now, we've always also stipulated that the sample co-plugs are there as just that, a sample. They're there for you to get started so that you can program your own radio, which is why we don't put all the repeaters in there. We just put the RMHAM repeaters in there. Now that we have a dual channel, gosh darn it, dual band radios, we may want to rethink that. But since there are only 5 RMHAM UHF repeaters in the network, it would seem a trivial thing for folks to be able to put those in themselves. So that's why the VHFs weren't in the samples. Where to access this recording when done? Did we record this, John?
Yes, it's being recorded.
Okay, so somewhere it'll probably be listed on the front page of the RMHAM website for a while, and there should be a link in the description of that. Hey, this happened, to be able to access the recording.
It'll be under RMHAM University Video.
Okay, very good, thanks. I don't know what you said, Dave. You said where to access this recording when done, and you said frick for frequency. I would presume. What was that? You could clarify that question if necessary. Until then, any other questions for the chat? Feel free to put that in from anybody. Oh, dual frequency, yeah. Dual frequency, dual band, yeah. Cool. All right, we'll give it another couple of minutes here to see if there's any other questions that come into the chat. Thanks, great session. Yep, absolutely. Thanks for doing this. Absolutely. Yeah, this is part of what I like to do. And I don't, and some of this I'm learning right along with you guys. Just when John says things get posted to the website before they anywhere else, he's absolutely correct. It hits the website before it actually gets to me. So I have to go and check that to make sure that I keep up with that, and I haven't been doing a very good job of it, to be honest. Any other general questions about DMR? Anything like that? Brandmeister, are there plans on when upgrading the VHF hardware on a Malgray? That's a John question.
I'm not sure what he's speaking of. Our plan there is to rebuild the whole stack up there to come up with some newer repeaters, but it's essentially going to be the same as what it is now.
I think what he's mentioning is that on the website it shows the Denver Central VHF on Lookout Mountain as receiver impaired, but no, that's not on Malgray.
No, that's VHF is definitely receiver impaired. It has antenna issues.
Okay. VHF hardware on Malgray was upgraded last year.
Our antenna.
Okay. Doug says that VHF hardware on Malgray was upgraded last year. Let's see. I would like to see a mapping of how talk group, channel, zone, and frequency relate. So they only relate in terms of the channel, everything of that in a channel. So channel is a color code, frequency pair, a repeater slot, and talk group. That's what a channel is comprised of. That's basic DMR programming stuff. For that, I would recommend going and looking at our DMR programming for amateur radio video that's on YouTube. If you search for DMR programming for amateur radio, my video will be up there as well as several others. So that's been done, and to be honest, it's kind of been done to death. But if you still need help after viewing that video, please email me and let me know. Is texting across DMR legal in the eyes of the FCC? That's a tricky topic, and what we recommend that you do is that you put your call sign in the text message. The FCC requires that you identify on your transmissions, and putting your call sign in your text message would technically cover that requirement. So the best way to stay legal is to put your call sign in your text messages. It's a CYA, if you know what that means. Big changes from 6550 to 7550 Motorola XPR radios. I think that's just color screen, if I remember correctly, but it's kind of out of scope of this as it gets into specific radio questions.
It also has in excess of the 16 channel limit per channel, or per group.
Okay, cool. How do you modify the code plug to use a hotspot? Most hotspots are simplex, so you just program a simplex channel, really. So the same frequency for transmit and receive, and you're done. It's not that hard at all. It's just like any other thing, thankfully. You see, I learned more in one RMHAM presentation I do in 6 months of other groups. That's cool. How about zones? Zones are just, again, this is basic programming stuff. So a zone in a radio is basically a collection of channels. So on DMR radios and most commercial radios, you have a dial that changes the channel. And for some radios, you're limited to the number of channels you can have on that dial. Some are 8, some are 16. Some of the newer ones that are more amateur radio focused are unlimited, maybe up to 32 or whatnot. So the way that you determine what channels are assigned to that dial is through a zone. Now you can pre-create multiple zones with multiple set of channels, but you can only have one zone active at a time. So you can go into your menu on your radio and change the zone, and then that zone determines what channels are on the dial, and then you switch the channels by using the dial. So that's what a zone is. Very simple. Are there plans to expand east to the Kansas City state line?
Yes, at this time, we're working with a partner in Genoa. They're currently trying to get the general repeater back on the air. Once that's done, they're going to probably work towards first view.
Right. Now, I will strongly, and this is something that I like to strongly stress, these are plans. They are not promises. So please forgive us if our plans don't exactly pan out. Things happen. So just because we're planning it doesn't mean it's going to come to fruition. If it does come to fruition, of course, it's awesome. But please, they're plans, not promises.
Remember that every one of these DMR sites is nearly $10,000. So if you guys want a repeater really, really badly, send us a check.
Yeah, and we depend a lot on associates. A lot of these sites are other people that are bringing up and putting up the hardware and support and whatnot, and asking to attach to our network. So not all these are 100% owned by us. They're owned by people that we work with. So that is part of the reasons why we're able to expand to the degree that we do. Let's see. Are there any plans to deal with channel conflicts in the event of an area emergency? For example, a large fire like happened last year. That is basically, we have to rely on the good nature of the hams in the area. There's really not a way to limit that. We can't block people from transmitting on the repeaters. It's just not technically feasible. The 390 radio acceptable? Yes, the 390 is, the 380 is. Those are long tested, super solid low end radios. And I think the only difference between the 980 and the 380 and the 390 is that the 390 was like weather was weather rated, but it's the same internals. Excuse me. If a hotspot is simplex connection, is it transparent to the whole zone channel? What do I say? Well, I want to connect to your DMR net. I just dial up your DMR net and we'll connect via the hotspot. No. So again, the hotspots are for larger networks like Brandmeister, DMR Mark. You can also use it on, you can use it for D-Star. If you connect that to the D-Star server and whatnot, Fusion as well. So the hotspots work by connecting the hotspot to any kind of network that uses like a server. So Brandmeister uses a server. D-Star uses computers to do linking, that kind of a thing. We don't have that kind of capability on the RMHAM network. So we do not, there's no way to connect the hotspot into the RMHAM network. You have to use a repeater, right? Have you tested the roaming capability using some of the newer radios? Yes, and they're very rudimentary, but they do work to a degree. So they're kind of rudimentary. The thing to keep in mind about roaming is that when you create your roaming setup, you have no control over which repeater that the handheld or the radio will choose. So in that case, the roaming is really limited to a single talk group. So it works really, really well if you want to stay on one talk group, but roam across various repeaters in an area. Okay. If you put multiple repeaters in there with multiple talk groups, you have no idea which talk group you're going to end up on. And that is going to limit the connectivity and the ability to connect with people because of that. But yes, the roam feature on the Anytones, for example, does work. And it does function. But I would say that the ones on the Hytera and the Motorola radios work much better. And that's because they cost more and they're more robust. You get what you pay for. So, any other questions? These are coming in fast and furious. I love it. Yeah, was roaming your mileage may vary? Definitely. Very, very definitely. Never mind the fact that the Anytone roaming setup is very, very strange. And I'm still not quite sure that I have it up correct. I just know that it works, and so I'm not messing with it. But I hardly use it. I hardly use the roaming. The only time I use the roaming is when I'm going down to New Mexico and I roam on Rocky Mountain. It's the only time I ever use roaming. So I cannot access RMHAM network via hotspot from Western Slope. No, you cannot. Roaming is working well on the Kenwood commercial DMR radios. Good to know. Wish I had the kind of money right now to be able to afford a Kenwood commercial radio. Other questions? This has been a very, very good session. John just put in a link and coming into the regional talk groups from Hotspot on Brandmeister. Regional talk groups. Oh. That was weird. That didn't copy for me. That's weird. Copy. Paste. There we go. Interesting. Okay. So, John, if we go out on these Brandmeister talk groups, they only come out on the Cheyenne Mountain repeater. Is that correct?
No, this comes out on any repeater that's carrying those 3 talk groups.
Very cool. All right.
But we intentionally left off 700 because 700 is intended to be a statewide and or 2 statewide network, and it would be interfered with if we allowed inbound Brandmeister connectivity. It was mostly designed for Aries use, and if we allow that connectivity, it becomes a train wreck.
And this is 2-way. So if I transmit on to Central from Lookout Mountain, it goes out on Brandmeister 310801?
That's correct. But
very good.
Can't change that. It's hard coded.
Yeah, no, that's as it should be. Very good. So I was wrong. You just can't on the Rocky Mountain wide. So unfortunately, won't be able to get in on the net. Speaking of the net, we do have a net every first Saturday of the month at 7:00 p.m. Mountain Time on the Rocky Mountain Talk Group. So if you can get on to the Rocky Mountain Talk Group from any of your repeaters, you can participate in the net, and you're very, very much encouraged to do so. All right, back over to the chat. Very good. A couple of other things. If you do want to donate, there is a wide donate button here, and also state donations and whatnot. So if you click there, some donation things. Also, if you're familiar with Amazon.com, and I'll be very surprised if nobody on here or somebody on here is not familiar with Amazon.com. Amazon has a service called Smile. So you go to smile.amazon.com, and you can choose a charity to donate to, and you can choose Rocky Mountain Ham Radio as your charity. So if you're buying stuff from Amazon, go to smile.amazon.com and set that. It doesn't cost anything else to you. And then if you just leave that like that and buy stuff at smile.amazon.com instead of regular www.amazon.com, if you use smile.amazon.com instead, a portion of what you buy, a small portion of that gets donated to the club. So that's a nice little way that you can support the club.
Since Jeff Ryan isn't here, I'll put in another plug for RMHAM in the sense that one of our sister or brother organizations is Wyoming DMR, and we're not interconnected with their DMR network, but our RMHAM NetOps group actually support the networking that underlies that Wyoming DMR. So if you go up to Wyoming and use their DMR network, RMHAM helps support that. So consider that as well.
All right. Rob is asking, isn't that an Aries net on the first Saturday? I don't know. Is there an Aries net on the first Saturday of the month? I don't know of one. We set this up a couple of years ago because we were trying to find a day and a time that didn't interfere with other nets. So it's been on that time for the longest time. So I don't know if there's an Aries net there or has been, but 7 o'clock p.m. first Saturday of the month. Sunday night at 8 is Aries net. Okay, Colorado Connection. First Thursday. Okay, good. Good to know that we didn't mess that up. All right, any other questions? We're getting close to 10 o'clock. There wasn't really a limit on this, but this would be, 10 o'clock would be a good stop time. If you have any other questions, please feel free to put them in the chat now. Just waiting for people to type to make sure we don't miss anything. I'm getting a lot of thanks in the chat. You guys are very much welcome. Just really kind of bummed that we couldn't do this in person. But in failing that, doing this over a web session like this is absolutely the best way we can do. Happy to do it. Happy to continue to do it. We're going to continue to do it because we always have new people coming into DMR, new people coming into amateur radio. So we do this on a semi-regular to regular basis. And I'm hoping that we can get the lockdowns and whatnot lifted to where we can get out and about and mingle in a very, very safe way. Because I know if you're anything like me, you're getting a little cabin fever going on here. So, and I'm making excuses to go to the store just to get out of the house when I can. What is the website the best for updates? Yes, absolutely. The website is best for updates. rmham.org. And the home page here will always have the announcements and things. Okay. So now we did recently have a hack situation where we had to refresh the website, but we got it back up as quickly as possible. So that kind of made things go a little wonky for a while. But again, any updates like this, the website is absolutely the best place to go. Check back regularly on the DMR networks. DMR site information page here. Those new repeaters will be listed here first. You will see it here first. Absolutely. Here's our list of sample code plugs. You'll notice that anything that's not Motorola, I have my name on. So these again are the major radios that we support. Before I forget, or code plugs. There is a gentleman by the name of N0, his call sign is N0GSG, and he has this DMR contact manager. Okay. So this thing allows you to convert between popular code plugs and allows you to add things and export to a CSV, import from a CSV. This thing is fantastic. This is why you don't see us putting out a code plug for every radio that comes in, because this thing exists. So it's n0gsg.com/contact manager. Right there on the page. Somebody's making a lot of noise. Can we get a mute on that? There we go. So, and he keeps this fairly up to date. But I would recommend that you do go get it, download it, use it. Oops. Hang on. There we go. Go up here to the support option and choose a support option and throw money at this guy, because that'll keep him to where he keeps this up to date as much as possible. It's fantastic stuff, and a lot of people wouldn't be able to function without it. That's how good this stuff is. So go get it, go throw money at him, and use it. Okay, Rob's asking, the only way I can get to your net is with a hotspot, can reach your repeaters, but hot gets me to BM on your, not an active TG, but is RMHAM. Yes. Yes. It's just a translation. It just translates between the two with the hardware in place, which is good. But for me, it's always cleaner just to go out to the repeaters directly. That's the best. If you have access to a repeater, that's going to be the cleanest way to do it. But if you can't, and you can only get a hotspot, you can get to north, central, and south. So that is awesome, that level. All right. So these radios are the ones we have code plugs for. Generally speaking, if a new radio comes out and the N0GS utility supports the new radio, you can create a blank code plug in the new radio software, open it in the contact manager, and then import from one of the supported code plugs. So even if you don't have a code plug, or we don't have a code plug, you can translate using this utility. So it's very, very good. Where's the info to access the RMHAM stuff through Brandmeister? That's a good question. Rocky Mountain Ham Radio site, Brandmeister. Brandmeister repeaters, Brandmeister DMR linking. That's where this page is. Okay. Now, all you have to do is set up this talk group as one of your Brandmeister transmit talk groups. So when you transmit out on your code plug, it'll end up on the South talk group. It'll transmit out. There's nothing magical that you have to do from your end. You just have to program the correct Brandmeister talk group. That's all you have to do. So it's under Brandmeister DMR linking there. Do you have a subscription to code plug updates? Is still working? We just moved over to Google Groups, and I have not yet moved my announcements over to the Google Groups. I haven't had time. I've been trying to actually find a job, which has been taking up most of my time. I lost my job at the end of January, right before the coronavirus stuff hit, and it's made getting a new job very, very difficult. So hopefully this next week or so, I'll be able to hook up with the guys and get the Google Group stuff going, just so that when we have stuff, we can start announcing it. We'll try to get something out there as well. John, is the Google Groups information on the website yet?
Wayne's got all that. I have to ask him.
Okay.
I'll send an email and make sure he does that.
Thank you. Sample code plugs page. Yeah, because the click here link for subscribing to the email list isn't there anymore. So we need him to update that so we can get folks subscribing to the list. We need to get that announced out on the net as well. All right. For those, there's a few folks asking what kind of work I'm looking for. I was working for EMC and / Dell as a technical pre-sales resource. So I was and it's for specialty pre-sales. So servers, storage, converged setups, hyper-converged, and data protection, software, that kind of a thing. So that's the kind of work I was doing. And then my last job within the company was also in competitive intelligence, which I can now kind of freely speak of the fact that I was working for competitive intelligence, which I couldn't before. So those kind of jobs, if you know of anybody that's hiring in the Denver area for that, I have applications in for several companies who have told us in no uncertain terms that we'd love to have you, but because of coronavirus, things have slowed down. So as soon as things normalize, we'll be back in touch because we want you to work for us. Doesn't help me in the near term, but that's kind of things we are at the moment. Excellent. It is 10 o'clock. This seems like a very good point to go ahead and stop. Thanks everybody for coming. Again, if you have any questions that you think of after we stop the meeting here, you can certainly contact me directly at k0nga@arrl.net. Look at the website. There's tons of information on the website. If something that doesn't make sense, email me. Happy to help you out. Everybody have a very nice rest of your weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy. And we'll see you guys at the next either physical or virtual event.
Yes,
Thanks, guys.
we're planning on having a regular RMHAM University in person starting again in October. So thanks very much, Mike, for putting on this presentation. Very much appreciated.
My pleasure. All right, guys. Have a good rest of your weekend. Thank you.